what I began to understand is it doesn't matter so much what I think about something. It doesn't matter what I believe about something. It matters what I do in relationship with that something.
Hey everyone, this is Kim O'Neill from the Every Day is a New Day podcast and live show, and you're listening to the Going North podcast with the hilarious Dom Brightman. Be sure to subscribe to his show so you don't miss any episodes, and remember, every day is always a new day.
And today on the High Live Real Builder for Authors, known as GMP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, it's the Going North podcast, baby. And I got to thank my good buddy Bonnie for hooking me up with this super special, awesome human right here, because my goodness, this wonderful gentleman right here, at the age of 17, he enlisted in the U.S. Army and served in the Vietnam War in the U.S. Army, my friends, as a helicopter crew chief. And he was honorably discharged at the age of 20 and was awarded numerous medals, including a Purple Heart. And after battling some severe PTSD, isolation, and addiction, he discovered Buddhist practice and began intensive training and study. And in 1995, he was fully ordained as a Zen Buddhist monk in the Japanese Soto Zen tradition. And since then, he's been dedicating his life to addressing the causes and consequences of violence, war, and suffering amongst individuals, families, and societies, using the wonderful Buddhist practice and the tools that the practice has given to him. And he is doing a wonderful job at it because he's got two fabulous books out there and probably more to come to help you live a wonderful life, if not live it at a more wonderful level. So let's give it up for the one, the only CAT. And don't worry, this ain't no meow. It's Claude AnShin Thomas. How you doing today, Claude?
Dominic, I'm doing quite okay, thank you.
Woohoo! Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Glad you're okay. Thanks a bunch for your service. Thanks for all the work that you're doing to help folks get some more peace into their lives.
You're very welcome. And one of the things that I would like to address right off the top, if you don't mind. Now, in the introduction, you mentioned that I live with post-traumatic stress disorder. What I've made a great effort to do over the last couple of decades, in my engagement with soldiers from various conflicts and with people who have experienced war-like trauma, is to take the D out of PTSD, because from my perspective, we are not disordered. The way we relate to the world now makes a great deal of sense based on the reality of our experiences either in combat or in warlike circumstances. So what I encourage people to do is to not see themselves as disordered, but see themselves as wounded. And also there's a great deal of emphasis being put on the existence of moral injury. Moral injury, the betrayal of what is right by people in positions of power or systems in positions of power and authority. And understanding that moral injury is a wounding of the spirit, and that post-traumatic stress is an aspect of moral injury. So again, I'm not psychologically damaged. Yes, there is a psychological component to post-traumatic stress, to moral injury, but it is not just that. The healing that's involved in learning to live with post-traumatic stress, because we need to learn how to live with it. It doesn't go away. The consequences of our service or of our experiences do not go away. However, we can learn to live at peace with our unpeacefulness. And so rather than take merely a psychological approach, I bring people into the practice of meditation, explaining to them and helping them to understand that meditation and daily life are not two things. So meditation isn't some funky thing you do you sit in a corner somewhere and stare at a wall. But that, yes, it's important to have a disciplined practice of sitting, to begin to cultivate an active relationship with the essential principle of meditation, which is breath awareness. And then once moving from this place of silence, which sometimes takes place on a cushion or on a chair on the edge of the bed, wherever one happens to sit, and then to take that experience into everything we do all of the time. So when we move away from this place where we're cultivating more silence, more consciousness, more awareness through connecting with our breath, then walking to the kitchen becomes an act of meditation. What we're doing here, speaking to you, my talking becomes an act of meditation. Understanding that the words that I share, the words that I utter, have impact beyond what I can imagine. So to be really thoughtful and concentrated in what I present.
Amen. Well, I'm glad I botched it and added a D in there so we could get that wonderful explanation out to the wonderful universe, because folks need to hear it. I'm glad you clarified that piece of it so folks realize, hey, it's there's some stuff that happened in the past, but that doesn't mean we're disordered. It's just morally wounded. So definitely something new that a lot of folks probably need to consider.
Yes, and please, Dominic, no botching. No, it's not that you botched anything, because it's still rather within the medical systems and within, let's say, within the context of the Veterans Administration, within within the communities of healing professionals, it's still often referred to as post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's just something that I make an effort to bring into the consciousness of those that I come in contact with, because I live with post-traumatic stress. The consequences of my military service, they don't ever go away. My relationship to these has changed over the years. In fact, you mentioned earlier about I have had the privilege to have 2 books published. The title of the first book that I've had published, and it was published through Shambhala Publications, the title is At Hell's Gate, A Soldier's Journey from War to Peace. In that book, I was really nervous initially to have that book published. I was nervous about how people might react to my sharing my experiences as truthfully as I could about war, because I don't make an effort to glorify it. I don't make an effort to demean it. It's just I make an effort to talk about the truth of it from my experience, and I know that there are groups of people who need to see their military service in a particular way, because that then justifies or wraps them up in a coat of armor that they feel protects them from how they have been affected, and I know to what extent sometimes those groups will go to protect that storyline. And so I was quite afraid, because I do challenge that storyline to a certain extent. I don't deny their storyline, but it's not mine. But at Hell's Gate, I do set out the my evolution from seeing myself as disordered to coming to terms with the fact that I'm really not disordered. This is the way I view the world, the way I experience the world makes sense based on the truth of my life. Because I also, in that book, break down my life into the war before the war, and the war after the war. So I can see from from my life experience, I can see how I have been affected and how the consequences of those effects have shaped the way in which I see and interact with the world about me. In the second book that I've had the privilege to publish, and this one's published through Oakwood Publishing, is titled "Bringing Meditation to Life." It's a series of quotes and a series of insights that people have gotten through public talks that I've done, through retreats that they've attended with me, and it's a compilation of those. And I was very surprised by the public's response to this particular book. I wasn't sure about it when I agreed with the editor to go ahead and publish it, but people have responded to it very, very positively, and that's been encouraging to me.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. He said something very interesting about storyline. So, with the background in war, especially the war after the war, that a lot of folks don't really consider, like, do you feel like you may have still been able to get to where you are today, especially with becoming an ordained Buddhist monk, if you didn't go through that particular period of going through that war?
Well, you know, the, I don't think about that too much, Dominic, because the larger truth is my life is just like that. So I don't really contemplate much. Well, if my life would have been different, what would it have looked like? I have no idea. And for me, there was a point in time when I did do that, but I've discovered through a process that, there's just no point in that. My childhood was like it was. My adolescence was like it was. And a big chunk of my adolescence, 17, 18, 19, was spent in the military. My adolescence was like it was. And then my life afterwards was like it was. Now, I'm ordained in a Japanese Zen Buddhist tradition. And the first monastery that I lived and studied at, the abbot of that monastery put forth an example or a phrase. I don't know how quite to articulate this, but one of the things that he would routinely say is that, regarding our own lives, is that this is like this. Our life is like this because of all that we had experienced up to that point. Now, what I do with my life today will shape how it unfolds. And so this is like this because that was like that. And as this is, that will become. It's very simple. And to me, there was just a clarity or the truth of that, not to some relative idea of truth, but the truth of it that transcended relative understanding for me. It just resonated with my being. I just went, oh, yes. Some pieces started to fall into place. I also learned the other important message that I got was in 1980, not by choice, but rather by direction, I entered into psychotherapy. And I will say that this psychotherapist, a lot of people have some mixed ideas about psychotherapy, but I found it, this guy helped me to save my life. Period. End of story. He helped me to save my life. And he also listened to me. At a certain point in that process, I entered into a drug and alcohol treatment center because I was looking at alcohol and drugs as a solution to my suffering. That I just wanted it gone. And that was the model that my father and the people around me passed on to me. It didn't work for me. In fact, it didn't. It made my life was spiraling more and more out of control. So once I went through a drug and alcohol treatment program and stopped taking drugs to include alcohol, when I addressed the psychotherapist about this, he took a different tack. Rather than attempting to address my struggles with the world around me, and my ability to adapt or find my place, instead of addressing that through medications, he supported me to begin to learn to live at peace with my unpeacefulness. Um, so it was through stopping alcohol and other drugs and staying stopped, and then the support of therapy and the support of groups of like-minded people that I associated with, um, that led me to Buddhist practice. Buddhist practice would then open my eyes to some truths that I understood but didn't have words for, wasn't able to articulate. I will say, though, that the process of learning how to live at peace with my unpeacefulness was neither easy nor comfortable. There were points where it felt very destabilizing. I didn't know whether I was sane or not sane, but I had the supports around me to help me to understand that what I was experiencing would pass, that I wasn't as crazy as I felt, and they didn't lie to me. They were truthful. They said, just stay with the process, keep doing what you're doing. Don't take any alcohol or drugs. Continue to follow the guidance that has been provided to you through your monastic training, and really things will change. And they did. They didn't lie to me. My life became different. It doesn't mean that I sleep better. It doesn't mean that I don't have a startle reaction. It doesn't mean that life in the traditional way in which I was indoctrinated into made sense. It just, but I have found what was revealed to me was a way of living that at some level made sense to me.
Well, that's good. That's definitely good. And it was great that you were able to find a wonderful group of people, and heck, even drop the alcohol as well. Because, like, there's some benefits to it, but at the end of the day, it's really poison for our body. So it's good that you're able to drop that and be able to get to where you are now and still growing as a result.
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. Given the family history that I came out of, that I'm in the place where I'm at with the opportunities that have been presented to me, and that I'm able to accept the responsibility of those opportunities and not have to sabotage my life like I had consistently up to that point, is quite something. I have a deep sense of thankfulness for for all of the support that I've gotten along the way, to help me become.
Ah, beautiful indeed. Beautiful indeed. So, with all these wonderful practices you're able to pick up over the years, is there one that, well, of course, I'm pretty sure meditation is probably the top out of all of them.
Well,
So that's
no, in truth, Dominic, what is at the top for me is that no matter what, there's nothing that happens in my life or an experience that I have that a fix, pill, or drink will make better. That's at the top. Now, that becomes an aspect of my meditation practice, because as I stated earlier, one of the things that I echo constantly is that meditation and daily life are not two things. Everything that we do becomes an act of meditation if we're able to do it with intention, not the idea of intention, but through cultivating silence rooted in breath awareness, breathing in, knowing that we're breathing in, breathing out, knowing that we're breathing out, cultivating that more silence into our life. Everything every aspect of my life becomes a manifestation of an active meditation practice. So, yes, if I were to pick up a drink or think that there was a solution there, then the rest of it would crumble. There's no support there for me.
Amen to that. That's what I'm talking about, indeed, and definitely to get that message out there, because I'm sure a lot of folks, especially at times like these, they probably are even quicker to turn to maybe a pill or a drink, especially like I remember even last year early in the pandemic, there was a lot of memes online where folks are making memes about drinking because they try to use it as a way to escape their problems as opposed to try to face them head on.
Yes, it's true, and so I have a while my engagement is with the world. I specifically am engaged with um, cultures, uh, let's say disenfranchised cultures. Um, I'm engaged with people who are living outside on the street. I'm I work a lot in the. I'm engaged with cultures that are dependent on alcohol and other drugs. I'm also actively engaged with the veterans community and the active military community. And what I've seen, please, it's important for your listening audience to really. I know it's hard to wrap our minds around this, but uh, on the short end, 22 men and women, 22 a day, who are either active duty military or veterans, take their lives. It's like those who have died from COVID. To get your mind around the numbers, and it's difficult. Most people don't have a point of reference. Um, I unfortunately have a point of reference because of my wartime service. I know what death looks like. I know what large numbers of dead look like. Um, but yes, um, I know that hopelessness, the pointlessness that a lot of active duty military or veterans face when the world around them just doesn't make any sense. Well, if I have a mission, then all of that, all of the consequences of all the previous missions don't have the opportunity to surface. But when I don't have a mission, when I'm not active, when there's suddenly, when I'm more still, all of the feelings that I didn't process, all of the memories that were able to be compartmentalized because of my activity come bubbling up to the surface, and for the most part people don't have the tools to know how to know what to do with it. They just want it gone. And the simplest thing to do is and I don't know simplest, but a lot of people turn to alcohol and other drugs um, to make an effort to get rid of it, or um, they look for they get involved in other sort of behaviors that are not they can in the long term become destructive.
Uh, Definitely true, and I'm glad you pulled out that statistic about the veterans, especially because suicide rates, it's bad enough folks are committing suicide, but just the veterans alone, because I'm pretty sure the numbers, if I'm not mistaken, 3 times as high if it's just humans in general. And what I love about you, I forgot which past interview it was, but I believe one of the things I noted from one of it is that our conditioning prevents our enlightened state. So for you in particular, how I'm guess so basically how are you able to get your self conditioned in the right state to be able to get to where you are today, to be able to be in that state of realizing that everything is really a meditation, is being fully aware.
First, I have to be willing to do things different. And in my case, I had to be willing to do things different. I had to be willing to explore, try on the information that people were giving me. First the psychiatrist, then a social worker, and then what I was learning in the monasteries where I lived and studied. I had to be willing to attempt to do things different, but at the same time, not abandoning my ethics, my moral underpinning, which had been challenged through my military service. I sort of lost my moral compass, and my common sense. But under all of that, I had to really want to live differently. If I don't want to really live differently, if I'm not willing to do whatever it takes within the construct of solid moral underpinning and right ethics and common sense, if I'm not willing to do whatever it takes, my chances of learning how to live at peace with my unpeacefulness were I think right now were non-existent. It was important to me, and I didn't hear this. I might have heard it before and didn't recognize it, but when I entered into the monastery and I began to study with this particular Buddhist monk, one of the things that he echoed, or one of the things that he said, is that within me, within my person, exists my mother, my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, endlessly, this family lineage endlessly back through space and time. That the way I view the world has been shaped by those family, the information, spiritual, psychological, emotional information that's been passed down to me through all those family generations. Also, what he presented was that I'm also, my view of the world is also shaped by the collective conscious. And the way I understood the collective conscious was the institutions that make up our society and culture, like education, religion, politics, entertainment, the vast amount of institutions. They, depending on that, how I was affected by how my views of the world were shaped through my family generations. What are those institutions do I gravitate towards, and how do they also then shape the way I view the world? And I somehow knew the truth of that before he sort of passed on this information through a series of interactions. But I understood the truth of it, not the truth of right, wrong, good, bad truth, but a truth beyond that. It's like the truth of gravity. It doesn't matter what I think about gravity. If I step off the edge of a 10-story building, I'm going down. You know? So what I began to understand is it doesn't matter so much what I think about something. It doesn't matter what I believe about something. It matters what I do in relationship with that something. So to understand that I don't have to know exactly how I was influenced. I just accepted, yes, I understood the truth of what he was saying, the essential truth. And that I could break that cycle of suffering. And my father died, Dominic, at 53. He died of a massive heart attack in his sleep. I knew that his lifestyle killed him. My father had been a soldier, his father had been a soldier, and his father had been a soldier. There was a lineage of military service in the patriarchal side of my family. My father never spoke about his service in the Second War, other than the heroic kind of stories. If you remember earlier, I spoke about the storylines that people create to validate or to protect themselves from the real cost of war. My dad did that. And my dad was a school teacher. He was educated. He was well liked in the community where I grew up. And still, he drank alcoholically. He smoked like 20, 40, 50 to 60 cigarettes a day. He had a horrible diet. He essentially killed himself he committed suicide on the installment plan. And I see that this is an ongoing reality for not only us in the veterans community, but the overarching society. I look at how people have struggled through COVID times, when all of a sudden all of the things that we use for distractions were rather taken away from us. And how much denial there is about the interconnected reality that we live in. As I am, as you are, Dominic, as you are, I become. Your life is incredibly important to me, because as you are, I become. As I am, you become. In the overarching reality, you and I are not separate. I can tell by your picture, you have a bit more hair than I do. I have a shaved head. And our clothes are a bit different. It looks like, I guess I hope those are your real teeth. The reason I say that is mine. I have at least 6 or 8 now that are not because of injuries in the war. But see, if we focus on just those things, and then we're invested in creating separation endlessly. Yes, I don't know what your life is like, as you don't know what my life is like. But still, that doesn't mean that we are not connected. And so how to acknowledge that, rather than looking to create separateness and specialty and using that as an identity. I'm not afraid. I am absolutely not afraid to be part of an interconnected whole. I don't have to be. I don't have to be as I was conditioned. So, as I'm willing to live my life differently, I have the capacity to heal my family in me. I have the capacity to heal for the veterans who don't have that capacity. And so I'm deeply committed to this process.
Amen to that. Amen to that. It's great to be deeply connected to the process. And I'm so glad you're focusing on the whole unity aspect and realizing that, hey, just because the outer appearance may be different, that doesn't mean we're still not connected. We're all connected here. We're all wonderful humans with souls, and we have to realize that. It's like, hey, we're all life here. We have to realize that we're better together as opposed to just trying to separate ourselves, because really that does anybody no good at all, really.
Yeah, absolutely, Dominic. But at the same time, as I mentioned, I don't want to deny that our relative experiences, like growing up in the areas where we grew up, in the cultures and societies that we grew up in, weren't different. So to be able to acknowledge those differences at the same time, understanding that we are ultimately connected.
That's right. We are connected indeed. That's right. Almost like a peanut butter jelly sandwich. We're all connected.
That's great. I like it. Yeah.
Oh, man. So, since this is far from your first metaphorical rodeo on these podcasts, is there a question that you wish you would receive more often?
No, not really. I um, no, I'm quite content with the questions that people ask. Although what I do encourage people to do is somehow people have the idea that they have to ask some profound, earth-shattering question, or something really deep and or something really Buddhist or Zen-like, because people have all sorts of ideas about what Zen is. Um, and what I encourage people to do is the simplest of questions. I would like people to not step over those simple questions. I spoke with a group of people last night, and whenever I talk, um, if I speak publicly, I use a bell, a small bell, a small meditation bell, and periodically, the person who's attending me at that moment um, wakes up that bell and helps it to sing. I know that probably 60 to 80% of the people who are listening are wondering, what in the world is that bell for? However, yeah, seriously. However, now rarely does anyone ask because they think there's this impression that, well, if I ask I mean, everybody must know what the bell's for. And if I ask it, I'll look stupid and so on. So, but it's the person who asked the question understands that you're asking the question for the larger group. What happened last night is that somebody had the question, but waited until they had me in private to ask the question. And so what I encouraged them was said, please, going forward, don't keep that question to yourself. Ask these questions out loud. The simple questions, like, why do I have a shaved head? And what is the symbolic nature of the clothes that I wear? These sorts of things. They're the obvious questions that people have. So yes, I wish people would ask those simple, straightforward, obvious questions.
Solid right there indeed. Heck, especially with the simple question of the clothing, I remember, funny enough, I actually remember a Muslim colleague of mine. She actually, when she started working, she used to wear a hijab. And then
Yeah.
a few months into the job, she actually stopped wearing it. And when she stopped it, we were all like, "What? Like I thought that was required." And then she was like, "No, it's actually not required in the faith to actually wear the hijab. It's actually a choice. It's just something that's been passed down for generations that folks just assume that it's truth." So you're so right about asking straightforward, simple questions because
Yes.
sometimes we want to go so deep that we, in a way, miss the forest from the trees.
Or we assume that we know.
Ah, that too.
Yes.
Definitely that too.
Yes.
Oh man. Well, speaking of questions, got this fun question I've been quote unquote torturing the guests with. Well, maybe not torch, that's probably a bad word for it. But with this wonderful book, your latest book, Bringing Meditation to Life, 108 Teachings on the Path of Zen Practice, if it was a particular food item, what food item would it be since I would consider books mind food?
It would be the supreme meal. Whatever that is for you, it would be the supreme meal.
Ah, solid. Solid right there indeed. There you go. I always love the responses I get to those because it's so true. It's like, hey, you know what? Forget calling it a taco or a slice of pizza. Like, no, it's just a supreme meal, whatever
Yes,
that is for you.
that's right.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, because it considers everybody's dietary restrictions.
Yes. I mean, like in my life, let's see, for the past 40 years, I don't eat any meat, no fish, no poultry. Uh, I don't eat any processed sugar. I also don't I don't eat pasta, white potatoes. Um, my life has evolved. People ask me, well, so why? And I said, well, I don't want to support institutions of killing. Um, but that being said, I don't impose my standard. I don't impose the way I live or the way I eat. I don't impose it on others. I'm not a proselytizer. That's also what drew me to Buddhist practice. I'm not a proselytizer. This is what works for me, and I live that out loud. If someone has interest in it, I'm glad to share with them and let them know how I got. I let them know what my life is like, and I'm glad to support them if they want to try it on and see if it fits. Um, but no, um, this is a supreme meal for me is one thing. It's something different for you. It's something different for someone else. But that's what bringing meditation to life is about. It'll offer something different to whoever reads it. And that's what's really, I've had a number of people write to me because I'm accessible online. I've had a number of people write to me and just tell me how wonderful these quotes were, and I kind of go like, wow, okay.
Hey, well, if it's good stuff, you gotta let people know about it, indeed. And what's good stuff is I love the fact that you live to a high standard, but you don't impose it on others. I wish a lot of folks would keep that in mind nowadays, because it almost feels like folks are just trying to force their beliefs onto each other, which is probably why the world currently the way it is, especially in the Western world, where they're trying to force ideals on each other without actually letting folks just try things on and see if it actually fits, and then keeping it on, as opposed to just like, oh, you got to do this thing, you got to take a certain pill or drug or whatever, you got to hang out with a certain group of people, you have to love or hate this person. It's like, no, actually, just live out your truth and your beliefs and your standards, and you can introduce it to others if they ask, and if they don't, they don't. Just keep it moving, and we can all probably live more harmoniously that way.
Yes, it's about seeing where we are connected, not where we are different. It's too easy to see where we're different. I'm not threatened by someone who believes differently or dresses differently or talks differently. I'm not threatened by that. I'm stable enough in my own life that I'm okay, as long as someone is not claiming exclusivity in the lifestyle that they've chosen and attempting to impose that on me, or wanting to fight with me and argue with me. I don't have, well, I was going to say I don't have any objections to the way someone lives. It's not entirely true. I mean, if someone's lifestyle is causing harm to others, then I have an issue with that, and I would address that. But I would also like to say, if I have your permission, I'd like to mention the place where people can actually, if they want to know more about what it is that I do, if they want to find out where they can buy these books. And I will say that the proceeds from these books do not come to me. I have taken a vow of poverty. So by vow, I'm not permitted to work in a gainful way. I'm not permitted to earn money. There's a foundation that supports the opportunities to do the work that I do. That is the Zaltho Foundation. That's Zaltho. And it can be found at www.zaltho.org. There's a wealth of information in that website if people are interested.
Beautiful right there. So you heard that right, folks. Head over to zaltho.org, y'all. That's right. That's right. That's right. Support the foundation, indeed. So some great information can stay out there for folks to look into and see if it applies to their own life and see if it helps them live even better and not better. That's right, folks. It's some good stuff out there, indeed. And it's kind of interesting. So the vow of poverty. So I'm guessing, was that something by choice for yourself? Was it something that was spiritually led to you? Like, how did that come to be?
To become a fully ordained monk, there were certain commitments that I was that I needed to be willing to make, and that was one of them. Poverty, chastity, and I'm giving these in sort of from a Christian orientation. So poverty, chastity, and obedience. They're stated differently in Buddhist practice, but when I articulate them from this Buddhist perspective, a lot of people don't have the experience of association to be able to sort of get their mind around what it is that I'm talking about. People quickly identify with those three commitments because they're common in Western culture in certain religious circles. So I have a vow of mendicancy. Mendicancy means that I'm not permitted to work in a gainful way, and that I'm actually not permitted to live residentially for more than 3 months in any given year. Now,
Wow.
how does that work during COVID? Right?
Exactly.
So, but it's like your friend with a hijab. These are not um, the, the precepts that I take are not rules to be followed rigidly. They're guidelines. So, because I'm not able to travel or because I'm not able to wander as I have traditionally, it does not mean that I've somehow broken some rule. Um, these rules are organic. The precepts are organic. Oh yes, the clothes that I wear. At any given time, Dominic, I can stop wearing the robes if I wanted to. Um, I'm not forced to do anything here. I'm doing these things because they're the commitments that I made, and I wanted to see where these commitments led me. And so I made these commitments with, I was going to say with joy. That wouldn't be entirely true initially because I was really,
Right.
I didn't know about it in the beginning. I went, I said, I'll try these on and we'll see how they work. And then if they don't work, then I'm done. It's like shaving the head. I had really long blonde hair and I love my hair. And when they said you got to shave your head, I went, I don't know, man. But I said, then I came to the point. I said, well, yeah, it's hair. If I don't like it, if I don't like having a shave, if I don't like living with a shaved head, I can always grow my hair back. So I'm not rigidly trapped. And I can change my direction at any given point in time. But I am committed to the precepts that I've taken because I want to see what living in this way, more from my perspective, more directly, what it opens up for me, what it leads me to, what it shows me about myself.
Ah, that's what I'm talking about indeed. Very interesting indeed. Very interesting indeed. Well, the good thing about having a shaved head is like you wake up, you don't have to worry about doing your hair. Your hair is already done.
Yeah, it's serious. Yeah.
And plus the airflow is amazing.
There you go.
Oh man, oh man. That's what I'm talking about. This definitely been educational and even inspirational indeed. And thing is, probably not even scratched the surface yet. This is probably like 0.0001 of some of the knowledge my man has gained and accumulated over the years and decades to come. So we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but this time in the current year of 2021, with all of your knowledge and wisdom, what advice would you give to yourself?
Like I say, I'm not in the business of giving advice. Um, uh, I it's hard for me. I don't really speculate in those sorts of things because um, I'm not going to be 25 and wake up here. And it doesn't do me any good to have any regrets about the way my life unfolded. In fact, I don't have any. If my life would have been different than it has been, then the trajectory that I'm on now would have been entirely different. So, I'm just quite okay with the way things are. If I were to talk when I engage with other 25-year-olds, I attempt to share with them that um, they don't know as much as they think they know. you know, and that doesn't dismiss or discount what they know, but just to be willing to be as open-minded as only the dying can be.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, hey, that's some solid words right there. Some solid words of wisdom. That's right. Wouldn't change a thing. And that's great too. It's great to be able to live like that because a lot of folks will be like, oh my gosh, what if, what if, what if? It's like, well, focus on what is.
This is true, Dominic, true.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, for one more time, for the folks who want to keep in contact with you, maybe even donate to the wonderful foundation and keep up with all that you're doing, what's the best way for folks to do so?
Yes, they can, if they're interested, they can learn more about what the foundation does. Online, it has a very strong presence. It's on, there's a website, www.zaltho, ZALTHO.org, O-R-G. Also, the foundation has a Facebook presence and it has an Instagram presence. Not me. I don't have any social media presence, but the foundation can be found on Facebook and on Instagram. Just Zaltho. I don't know. I'm not on I'm not on social media, so I don't know how you find us on social media. But I think if you went onto Facebook and you somehow searched Zaltho Foundation, you'd find us.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. Check out the Zaltho Foundation. Indeed, the link to the site and the stuff that they're doing will be in the magical show notes. And be sure to pick up some copies of the book, because as my man Sir Claude mentioned, like, hey, he doesn't get the proceeds of it because that's not his thing. He took a vow of poverty, so it's all just to benefit the fellow man and woman. Y'all, I'm telling you, pick it up. See what's inside and change your life. It's a supreme meal, y'all. It's a supreme meal. That's right. That means it's extra shiny.
Extra shiny and extra tasty.
Yeah. Woo, that's what I'm talking about, indeed. So, any parting words before we close up the recording shop?
The only thing I would say, Dominic, is I would really thank you deeply for the opportunity to be on your show. I would thank those who listen to your show. I would like to thank them for dialing in and giving us a listen. And also, if anyone wants to, if anyone out of this time that we've been together, if anyone who's listening has any questions or has generated something and they want to get a hold of me, if they go on the foundation's website, they can write to me. There's a general email address. If they would write to me at that general email address, those emails then get forwarded to me, and I respond to every text that I get, every email that I get. But yes, I deeply thank you for this opportunity.
How's it going, my friend? I'm glad you made it to the end. That shows that you really enjoyed what you heard and you are an uncommon finisher. Thanks for giving this show a listen. If you really want to help out the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone that you care about or someone that needs to hear this message, because we want to spread this podcast around like butter on bread, if that's your type of thing. And if it's not your type of thing, still spread it around anyway, because good stuff needs to be shared with good people like yourself.